Hey everybody, it is Trags Mike Petralia back with the latest installment of the Jungle Roar podcast on the CLNS Media Network, powered by our good friends at Prize Picks. My pleasure to welcome in a first-timer on the Jungle Roar pod. He is the one and only Rocky Boiman, does a tremendous job with Cincinnati radio legend Eddie Fingers. 3-6 on the big one, 700 WLW here in Cincinnati. He is also an 8-year veteran of the National Football League, spanning several teams. We can get into that in just a moment. But Rocky, welcome to the Jungle Roar pod. How are you this Monday afternoon?
Trags, I couldn't be better, brother. Always happy to be with you. Always enjoy when you get to fill in on the Eddie and Rocky show and we get to talk some ball together, man. So I'm excited to be here today.
I will, full disclosure here, I am happy to talk pure football here, nothing but football. Of course, we go in different directions on the big one when I fill in for Eddie. But this is all Bengals all the time, all NFL, and obviously some college. But let's get to the news of the day. Dalton Risner, something that I think the Bengals knew they needed to get done early in the offseason. It was announced Monday, and Adam Schefter reported the terms of the deal, 1 year, $5 million. It was actually Dalton Risner's wife who got to break the news on Instagram, Whitney Risner, filling in for Adam Schefter, at least for the initial breakage of the story. But this is a move that I think was a no-brainer for the Bengals. He was incredibly well-liked inside that locker room, inside the offensive line room, and certainly Dalton Risner enjoyed playing and protecting Joe Flacco and Joe Burrow during the season. To me, this was a no-brainer, especially the way Risner played towards the end of the year.
No, absolutely. And I just loved how genuinely excited Risner was, right? I'm sure you were at the press conference. I watched the footage and just excited, 1 year, $5 million deal, but seemed genuinely excited to be a part of this Bengals franchise. So I thought that was really cool. You always love, seeing a player that looks really happy to be at a certain place. So I thought that was cool. But yeah, this was priority number one, as you and I have discussed and you've talked about ad nauseum. There's a lot of steps this Bengals team needs to take in order to get back in this playoff conversation. Yep. I think this was the first one. You secure him. Now that probably, negates maybe some higher needs in the draft that you can spend on some defensive players. I think you share that thought with me as well. So, yeah, good first step.
Indeed. And one thing that I really enjoyed about listening to Dalton Risner speak on Monday morning was his accountability and his certainly his awareness of what the reality of the situation was in Cincinnati when he arrived just before week number one. He was thrown into the fire. He even admitted on Monday morning that he didn't expect to start right away, but an injury happened to Lucas Patrick. He was thrown into the mix. He had to get up to speed really fast. And it didn't start out great. I mean, he obviously had to get his feet under him in week number one. Bengals won that game 17-16. And then he missed a block in game number two, and he admitted this on Tuesday. He missed the block that wound up getting Joe Burrow injured. Joe Burrow had to sit out. But you know what, Dalton Risner, and he was benched for a couple of games before he came back into the Bengals starting lineup as a starting guard. But he admitted that, look, I had to just say, nothing I can do about it now. All I can do is still prove that I am an NFL valuable starting guard. And I think he did that.
He did. And look, it's a story I know all too well about the NFL and that journey. It's there's so many ups and downs, and the highs are extremely high and the lows are low. But all you can do is just keep battling. And for him to, come in really off the street and play, in my opinion, one of the most complex positions, that being offensive line, with how you got to work with the other guys in tandem. That's no easy task. So, yeah, it didn't start off that great for him, but kept working, didn't get discouraged, do what everybody should do, and that is you focus on what's ahead of you, not what happened behind you. And he did that and worked himself into, again, another year in the NFL and a nice contract with a potentially very good team. So very, very happy for him and his journey.
He also gave a lot of credit to Zach Taylor and to Ted Karras. And I think Ted Karras meant more to Dalton Reisner probably, and certainly to a lesser degree Orlando Brown Jr. and Amarius Mims and the whole group. But Ted Karras meant something personal to Dalton Reisner because he made him feel like he belonged right away. And look, I don't care what walk of life it is, Rocky, if you don't feel like you belong in the workplace, you can feel like you're on the outside trying to prove yourself every day. And to have that acceptance is a big, big deal.
Yeah, and I've been on both sides of that, Trags, when different teams I've been on, and I've come in to teams early in the season, and and that sort of thing, and yeah, you can always tell. Certainly you can tell the great players just by if they're willing to be an accommodating teammate. I think that's priority one, is to make sure your guys around you feel comfortable, and football is the ultimate team sport. I mean, unlike any other sport, you got to have that team quality. And if you're accepted, and the way Ted Karras did, and I mean, my God, you don't even have to know anything about Ted Karras other than to listen to him talk to tell that he's a leader on this team. I mean, just the way he talks, the way he handles himself, it's just the body language that the dude has it. So that was a great thing, and that's what a team needs, especially a team. If you don't have all the top rated players at this position, that position, okay, you gotta you got to be able to have guys in there that maybe aren't the very best all pro level players, but can go and give you great reps. And so it does take that cohesiveness, especially at the line position. So yeah, it's great to have Karras in there, and great that Reisner was able to feel that bond with that team.
He also reminded everybody, Rocky, that he's still only 31, because I asked him if he had thought about how long his career would be and does he see himself retiring in Cincinnati. And he said, well, I'd love to retire in Cincinnati, but I have not thought about the end of my career yet. He said he'd like to think he has 4 or 5 more good years left in him in the National Football League. And I guess sometimes we take that for granted, that we think that the players, all of players want to play until they're 35 or 36. But when you go through the rigors of that position, and you know this full well from being on the other side of the ball as a linebacker, it's a grueling, grueling job day in and day out, season in and season out. And I thought I would ask the question because you never really assume.
Yeah, but I think what you're also seeing too, Trags, is with the way, and it's been a few years now that training camps are lessened. There's not 2-a-days. Back when I played, there was 2-a-days, 2-a-day camp practices for 2 weeks straight. I mean, maybe you got an afternoon off, and you would have thought that you got the greatest gift from heaven above when the coach said, we don't have a padded practice this afternoon. But that's the not to get on this tangent, but I would say that's, I think, in my opinion, a reason why some of the offensive line play isn't as refined as maybe it once was. But the upside is, I think these guys' bodies are feeling better. So now, it used to be age 30, that was the cutoff, but now I think with the way the league is built, and the fact that the practices aren't as grueling, I think guys can play past age 30 in a position like the offensive line. So he's certainly benefiting from that.
Speaking with Rocky Boiman of 700 WLW here in Cincinnati, I want to get to that point in a little bit, circle back to it, but also want to point out that Joe Burrow reached out to Dalton Reisner, and it was funny to hear Reisner tell the story on Monday morning. He said he left them a 5-minute message, a voice message, and Burrow eventually got back to him, eventually FaceTimed with him. But you could tell that I'm sure Joe Burrow feels like, okay, the whole group, all 5 positions are set. Maybe they add a 6th tackle, or I'm sorry, a 3rd tackle, or add a backup right tackle or a left tackle for Orlando Brown or Amarius Mims. But in essence, that offensive line in front of Burrow is set going into the offseason as free agency begins. That's a big deal.
It's important, yeah, especially that position. I mean, how many training camps have we been talking about the line, and all the pieces aren't there, and they're young, and you got to have continuity of that position. So that's certainly good news for Burrow. And look, a quarterback, Trags, is a de facto GM on a team. I saw it with Peyton Manning. He was involved in every decision, and reaching out to players. And I mean, that's part of his job. And if you're a good player and you care about winning, that you're going to do those things, reach out to players and talk to them and see how they feel. So that's a great sign. And I'm sure Burrow is excited to have an experienced group of linemen in front of him this year.
Speaking with Rocky Boiman, former NFL linebacker, a Super Bowl champion, and now co-host of the Eddie and Rocky Show on 700 WLW weekdays on the big one, 3 to 6 p.m. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right, Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. So don't miss this chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks correct, you could cash in. Pick from all of your favorite sports, anything from basketball, baseball, hockey, UFC, soccer, college basketball, tennis, golf, esports, and much more. Prize Picks now has early payouts. What does that mean? Well, if your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. Sounds like a great deal to me. With the new social feeds feature, also, you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Back on the Jungle Roar podcast, brought to you by Prize Picks. I'm joined by Rocky Boiman of Eddie and Rocky Show on 700 WLW weekdays on the big one. Rocky, I want to talk about the NFL Combine, which just concluded on Sunday, and some of your impressions and some of the names. This is the Bengal podcast, so I want to get your impression on some of the names that have been bandied about as possibilities for the Bengals at number 10. Sonny Styles, I don't think Arvell Reese is going to be around, but Sonny Styles might. Caleb Downs seems to be the consensus pick for the Bengals if he is still on the board at number 10. David Bailey, he is a possibility. Peter Woods, out of the defensive tackle out of Clemson. What are your thoughts after watching this past weekend?
Yeah, well, first, let's talk about the Combine just a second. I think this was it's hard to deny, this was like a watershed advancement in athleticism that I think we've ever seen. I mean, here's a few stats for you, Trags. 11 wide receivers ran sub 4.4. 7 tight ends ran sub 4.4, including Sadiq, who ran a 4.39. 25 linebackers ran sub 4.5. And to put that in perspective, so I was a part of the 2002 Combine. The top line, there was 19 players that ran, including me. Robert Thomas, who wound up being a first-round pick, he ran a 4.51. That was the fastest 40 time, was 4.51. I think I was like the 6th fastest with 4.59. But again, now there's 25 linebackers sub 4.5. I mean, I think we were just seeing the culmination of all the training and the nutrition and all the advancements in technology and things like that. To me, this is the first year it was a really distinct jump. I mean, 7 of 9 position groups had the fastest average 40 times of all time. So it's the athleticism is incredible. You can no longer be a slow player and play this game. It absolutely can't happen. So just an incredible performances by a lot of guys.
So this is going to sound incredibly simplistic. Why does straight line speed matter so much to NFL scouts and NFL coaches?
Well, speed, and I could get into this. I mean, I study speed.
Please do.
Daily. It is It is the tide that lifts all boats. It is the single most important thing. There's a study out there. I mean, that shows. So they took a group of golfers, right? They took three groups. One group uh, did hit golf balls. The other group did nothing. The other group didn't hit golf balls, but just trained speed. And at the end of this little trial here, the group that trained speed wound up getting, I think it was 5 more yards of distance on their drive compared to any other group. So there's something about speed and twitchiness and athleticism that translates to any and all skills, right? And aside from all that, just the, this is a game of, at some point you got to be able to get from point A to point B, and you either got it or you don't. And I see it at the youth level. The players that are the fastest are the ones that are able to get in better position. I think speed really matters when it comes to tackling. Why is there some bad tackling? Well, there's, you can't practice it, all that, but also, in my opinion, you see some bad tackling. It's the guys that aren't fast and athletic enough. If you can get your body from here to there and be in position, you get yourself a better chance to make that tackle. Sometimes you miss a tackle for no other reason than you're not athletic enough to do it. So, this combine showed there's a lot of athletes out there, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Let me ask another question about measuring measurables. And that is a stat that doesn't get talked about as much, but I think is more important and more relevant to closing speed and being able to tackle, especially for guys like you who played the position of linebacker. That's 0 to 10 speed. How quick can you get up to speed? To me, if I'm watching a player, that number is probably as important, if not more so, than the 40-yard straight line speed.
Well, so my general manager with the Colts, Bill Polian, for 2 years, what a fantastic guy he is. He was a guy that's the number he looked at the most, and he didn't want to take players unless, I think it was 1.6. I think you had to be under 1.6, certainly to be considered a first round player for him. And you look at Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis and all these great defensive ends and corners and everything that were so explosive. That's the number he looked at. So yeah, that is within general speed. How quickly in a short space can you get up to that top speed? That's certainly a priority that he looked at. And I know a lot of other GMs look at as well.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Caleb Downs and what you've seen of him at Ohio State and what you saw of him, athletically over the weekend, how it projects to being a first round, not just a first round pick, but a first round pick who can impact force multiplier, as the Bengals like to say, as they did say over the course of last week. He is a force multiplier. He can be an impact player as a rookie. Why is that?
Well, first, my experience with Caleb Downs goes back 3 years ago. I called an Alabama game, 2-3 years ago when he was there, and I thought he was the best player on the field. Even then, as whatever he was, a freshman, sophomore, I forget what he was, but he was the best player on the field. The coaches even said that in the meetings to us the day before the game. Like, this guy's unbelievable. He has that, Minka Fitzpatrick kind of, just combination of raw athleticism, but instincts and just knowledge of ball, all those things that you got to have to be an elite player. And he had it, and I got to see it on that Saturday in person. And you talk about being a force multiplier. I always say this, with NFL rosters being so small, you need guys that can do a lot. This isn't college where you can have there's 100 guys standing on the sideline and, okay, I need this skill set. Well, let me send this guy in. I need this skill set. No, you need guys that can do a lot. And he can play the run. That's maybe the best thing he does. And I don't know about you, Trags, but I'm tired of seeing Bengals secondary players miss tackles. I don't want to watch it anymore.
I would say, and it's not going out on a big limb, you're not alone.
Yes. So, for that part of his game alone, I love. And he's instinctual. I like last year, I didn't think teams even wanted to test him, which may be why some of his, his numbers might be down a little bit, but I just don't feel like he was even tested, because they're like, look, he's there. We're going to go over here because of, again, how great of a player he was. But again, a guy that He can, plays well in the run, can play in the box, can blitz when you need it, but also good in coverage. Multiple elite skill sets in one player. That's what every NFL team wants, and that's what specifically this Bengals defense, that in my opinion, needs a lot of help. I think that would be a strong suit for them. Yes.
I'm sure the Bengals ideally would also like to have or either draft, sign, or have Jalen Davis step up at the nickel spot. But he could drop down on the line of scrimmage like we saw with Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton, according to Zach Taylor, and I know a lot of other NFL coaches and front office personnel feel this way too. He can play 9 of the 11 defensive positions and would not be out of play. When I first heard that, I'm like, come on. Really? And he's like, no. The only thing he could not do is play interior, probably. And even if you, and Zach would joke, even if you put him on the inside of the defensive line, he wouldn't get embarrassed. He may not win, but he wouldn't get embarrassed. And I don't know if Caleb Downs is that kind of guy. I also heard, and this is high praise, Ed Reed. When you hear the name Ed Reed thrown out when talking about Caleb Downs, you sit up and pay attention. It was one of my colleagues from Boston covering the Patriots, Alex Barth, who talked to a couple of people up in New England, and they're like, no, we see a lot of Ed Reed in Caleb Downs, and that would be something if the Bengals could add a player like that.
Yeah, I think Kyle Hamilton certainly is maybe a little different, that he's bigger and a little lengthier than Caleb is, but I think it's still very similar players and similar to Reed. I mean, I played, my meat of my NFL time was when the meat of of Ed Reed's time, and the thing that he did was just cover an incredible amount of space. It was like he'd play middle field safety in a guy that could get all the way over the sideline on a pass play in the NFL, which is just absolutely bonkers. I think that's a very strong comparison. And boy, if it worked out that way, you're talking about one of the best to ever do it, because I think Ed Reed was certainly the best to ever do it. So if he has anywhere even close to that skill set, that'd be big.
What about some other players that could be there? Sonny Styles is another name. I don't know if he's going to get to number 10 either, but he is another force multiplier that could, and I asked Duke Tobin straight up about Sonny Styles, because the concern with a guy like Demetrius Knight Jr. that Duke talked about last week was he thought a very, very solid rookie year once he gathered himself and once he acclimated himself. That's the word I was looking for. Once he acclimated himself to the NFL, he looked very comfortable, played very well, except for with one exception, and that is playing as that fifth guy down on the defensive line. Sonny Styles could do that if the Bengals landed him and brought him to Cincinnati.
He could. I guess the only thing with Style, first of all, obviously, 2 picks of the Bengals last year went to linebackers, and I am a pick the best player available. Which, by the way, I'm going to give you at the end of this, Trags. I'll give you my first round pick, and maybe it'll blow your mind. That'd be fun. That's a tease. I don't know if he's there. Certainly a possibility, but I would love to see a great secondary player. Certainly Sonny Styles can do a lot here. I don't know how much. I feel like the Bengals don't involve their linebackers in blitzing as much as some other teams. So I think maybe that might be something to consider. But if he's available, again, a guy that just set record numbers at the combine. I think in the playoff game against Indiana, he really showed up where maybe he didn't as much during the course of the year. He showed he can play at an elite level. So, it's all about getting great football players, great talent on your team, and that's what the Bengals need.
What about defensive tackle? Whether it's through free agency or in the draft, I think there's an acknowledgement both internally in the Bengals organization and on the outside that they've got to rebuild the defensive tackle position, and they've got to be able to stop the run better, be more stout. And that's a great word that always gets thrown around when talking about interior defensive line play. And they've got to get pass rush from the defensive tackle position as well.
Well, I mean, and obviously, as he's been talked about a lot, but John Franklin Myers would fit that mold in the free agency aspect. Had a career year with Denver last year, 7 sacks from the defensive tackle position. I mean, that's, I think, I don't know how that's all going to play out, but I think that would be a guy the Bengals would want to target. But yeah, and also sounded like from what Tobin and everyone said, they like BJ Hill and he could be back, which I think was kind of a question mark maybe early in the offseason. So I think in general, Trags, and I know you and I have talked about this, I think that's the hard part about this Bengals team is, especially defensively, it's not like, hey, we're one this away, or it's like you can make the case, boy, we need a little more help in the pass rushing situation. We need some better help defensively in the interior. Linebackers are young, secondary, the safety position needs to be rebuilt. There's a lot that needs to be done, and that's got to happen through free agency and the draft, but there's just a lot of things that I think need to happen.
Okay, here's what I think needs to happen. I think you need at least 2 defensive tackles, probably both 3 technique because of the priority of getting more pass rush. Maybe not. Correct me if I'm wrong. At least 2 defensive edges to back up Shamar Stewart and obviously Miles Murphy on the other side. Then you need a safety, so we're up to 5. Maybe another edge rusher, so maybe you're talking about 5 to 6 players that need to be brought in, I think, to really fortify is a good word, fortify this Bengals defense, bring it up to the standard, up to the level that could get the Bengals to the playoffs when you have a quarterback like Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, but that's 5 or 6 players. That's over half the defense, right? That's a lot that needs to get done. And I think you agree. The Bengals and how they've approached free agency doesn't give you in the past. Sometimes maybe doesn't give you the confidence that they can hit on getting those 5 or 6 guys that they need to get. It can happen. I think it's going to be very, very tough. Just again because of the amount of positions and players that you need to nail. But I think getting John Franklin Myers, I think that would be a big step here. Getting to Caleb Downs, I mean, you're talking about 2 elite players right there, and then hopefully you can get lucky with the rest.
All right, give me your number 10. Give me your mock. Who do you have? who do you like? And,
okay.
and I preface this by saying, I think I might know, given where you went to college. Am I warm or not?
You are boiling hot, Trags. I want the Bengals. I want free agency. Let's go. Let's get fortify this defense with a bunch of player acquisitions on the defensive side of the ball. And that first pick, take Jeremiyah Love. I think maybe. I think the top offensive player in the draft, I mean, a guy that's, again, we talked earlier about force multipliers, right? Like the ability to do a lot. He's maybe one of the best, he's certainly the best back out of the backfield. He's tremendous running back. I mean, Marcus Freeman has done everything but say he's the best player he's ever coached. And I know I'm being somewhat facetious here because I know the Bengals need other.
The Bengals are in their DNA, and you know this, Rocky, having grown up here, went to St. X. You know the Bengals are an offense-first team. They pretty much always have been, with a couple of exceptions, with Forrest Gregg, and then maybe a little bit in the late 80s when even with Sam Weish, they had a very, very good defense. But in their DNA, they are offense first.
Yeah, and I think you look at it like, you often hear best player available. But if you think that Jeremiyah Love can be an all-pro / Hall of Fame caliber player, and I think he certainly has, that's not like some crazy statement I made. Of course, a lot has to happen, but would you pass that up? Would you pass up the opportunity to say, man, we could have drafted a guy that is a perennial all-pro talent-wise? To get a defensive tackle that we weren't that sure about. I don't know. I know.
I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand like you think I might, Because if you tell me that Caleb Downs is not on the board, if you
Right.
tell me Sonny
Right.
Styles and Arvell Reese are not on the board, and you're telling me, well, it's take another corner, because there are a couple of outstanding cornerbacks, defensive back. I'm like, no. If it's between a cornerback and Jeremiyah Love, you take Jeremiyah Love. You take the best player on the board. Bill
Exactly.
Belichick would always tell Ozzie Newsome, one of the best to ever do it on the board in Baltimore. He advised him when Ozzie began his front office career with the old Cleveland Browns, stick with the board, stick with the best player. And if you have Jeremiyah Love as your best player on the board, you take him. And you wouldn't have to convince Zach Taylor to take him, right? Even though he loves to pass the ball, you give him another weapon with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. I mean, it is kind of a tease, but if Caleb Downs is on the board, based on what I've read about him, that's a no-brainer for this Bengals.
Yeah, if Caleb Downs on the board, even Ruben Bain, I know everyone's talking about his arms, and I get that argument, but God, so productive. But yeah, there's a scenario where rather than take, a project defensive end like that Auburn kid everyone's all excited about, or or a corner. Yeah, if it happens to work out that way, and Love's sitting there and he fell into your lap,
Kedrick Falk, yes.
Yeah, why not? Why not, Trags?
Okay, I want to circle back as we wrap it up here with Rocky Boiman of the Eddie and Rocky Show on 700 WLW, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m. Want to ask you about your days in the NFL, and you kind of touched on this. It's all about speed, but not as much about tackling. And we understand that the coaches and the front office people are trying to preserve their players because of the attrition of 17 and possibly 18 games, but 17 games. Where do you land on this? Because you played special teams, Rocky. You know the speed and the impact with which the game is played. How do you balance that? How does a team like the Bengals get better at tackling when it's so hard to practice it?
I mean, it is the $1 million question. Again, with in my 8 years, we were able to do more. We were able to practice tackle, and again, we weren't tackling to the ground in season, but during the week,
Thudding.
you at least you were thudding. You had full equipment on, and you were getting in position, and it's just it's just so hard because it's something that you have to do full speed. Like, ask any boxer out there. How do you get good at boxing? You got to hit people in the face and get hit in the face. You can do all the shadow drills you want. Ask a fireman, how do you get good at fighting fires? You got to put yourself in there, right? And that's obviously the hard part. I mean, I've been seeing a lot, people talking about, like how, I guess, like the rugby player, not the rugby style of tackling, but like Adam Archuleta was talking about it. Just how, how they, with like a pad and how they practice tackling, have like a mat where they, and kind of all year round, you kind of, do those, get as close as you possibly can and try to get as far away from the injury thing as you can and still be effective. But again, I think what you're seeing is coach, you're saying, well, let's just get the fastest, twitchiest guy out there, and he's going to give us the best chance if we're not allowed to tackle and hit as much as we used to.
The other thing is, and this is a big part of tackling nowadays, is swarming. You hear that term all the time. One of the best ways of bringing a guy down to the ground is swarming. And the play that will stand out to me about the 2025 Bengals is the Colston Loveland touchdown with 50 seconds to go. I mean, Jordan Battle has a kill shot. But not only that, he had two teammates, and I forget the two team. I think Geno was one. Geno Stone was one.
Yep.
But I think there was somebody else. There were three guys around him who could have made that play. Yes, Jordan missed, and he let him get away. But there were two other players there as well. When the best teams in the NFL, to me, at tackling are those who swarm to the ball.
Agreed. And that's, in that sense, tackling is a mindset, and you gotta either kind of love you love contact or you don't, and I think I could almost, summarize this Bengals draft or offseason saying, Give me the meanest SOB there is in college football and put him on that defense. I don't give a damn what position he plays. We need, I think this Bengals defense track needs somebody with that attitude, like Vontez Burfict, right? Like
A
that just kind
dog.
of, yeah,
They need
exactly.
dogs.
Yeah,
Yes.
Tim Trumry, those kind of guys. You need guys that are out there, man, mentally that aren't like a normal human being. Guys that love to put their face in the fan, as we used to say, and that's and that doesn't show up on a 40-yard dash, doesn't show up on any of that
No.
stuff, and I think it's increasingly more difficult to find. Because there's so much emphasis on the athleticism element, but yeah, I would find the meanest, nastiest son of a gun there is, and get him on that defense. This team needs an enforcer, and I think that should be a top priority. I will say this too, though, Trags, like gang tackling is always what you want, but the way modern offenses are is they're designed to get you in space, right? Which means,
Yes.
unfortunately, a lot of times it's going to come down to one guy making a tackle. These offenses are so good at figuring out how to get, a guy that runs a 4-3 in space, and you got to tackle him. There's no three guys around him at all. So that's the trick they're pulling. So again, where the athleticism on defense comes in, but at the end of the day, you need a mindset. No more of those Jordan Battle plays. I can't watch it anymore. Give me the nastiest son of a bitch there is in the draft or free agency, and put him in stripes.
I know I brought this up with somebody from New England. Christian Barmore is the psycho, and he is one of those guys that really toes or rides that fine line, that red line, like Vontez Burfict did. Bengals, I think, within reason, they need to add that mean streak to their defense, and not only means on the outside, it means internally in that room as well, to get that edge set early in the week and have it carry out through game day. Rocky, I cannot tell you thank you enough. I know you guys get going to prepare for your own show on the big one, but anything else on your mind before I let you go?
No, and that's it, man. It's exciting off season for the Bengals. Just football in general. It's a wonderful game that God blessed us with, that we get to enjoy and watch and talk about and argue about. I mean, I started playing football at age 7. I'm now 46, and I get to talk. I don't know a life without football, and hopefully I never do, man, because it's a lot of fun to talk about, and I always enjoy talking about it with you.
I appreciate that very much, Rocky. Back at you. He is Rocky Boiman of 700 WLW. Be sure to listen to the Eddie and Rocky show. I don't want to tick off Eddie. I don't want any nasty text messages or anything like that. But anyway, be sure to listen to the Eddie and Rocky show weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. on 700 WLW. It's a terrific listen, talking about everything going on in the world. My name is Mike Petralia. Trags, you can follow me on the X at Trags, Trags, and online, CLNS Cincy with a Y.com. Want to thank our sponsors as always, Prize Picks and the terrific folks at CLNS Media. Until next time, you know the drill. Keep that jungle roaring.